Ladies and gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, in the tradition of Bill O'Reilly, we'll do it live. So we're doing a live video here. As you can see, my wonderful, beautiful face is not on screen right now, but my voice is, and I am sharing the screen here. So wanted to do a quick Facebook Live video here regarding this piece that just came out in the Idaho Misstatesman. As you can see here, can't even read. October 2nd, 2022 at 4 a.m. They must have been working on this one pretty late into the night. But they came out with a piece, today on Sunday, a regrettable loss of expertise in the Idaho legislature engineered by the far right. The three Republican legislators dared to cross swords with the forces of the right-wing mania sweeping Idaho. I like that. I like that line. And they lost. So not just these three guys lost, a lot of guys lost. So here's the man I ran against, Jeff Hagenbrod. When you click on the article, however, you'll see that they want you to pay for it because, like a lot of the traditional dinosaur media, nobody wants to read this trash anymore because it's just a liberal rag disguised as a, traditional media outlet. So because we can't read it, I do have, and I don't pay for this, I never would, but someone who does have a subscription sent me the PDF. So we can read same article. This is the PDF of this right here. So I just wanted to go through it really quick. And I'll link the PDF. I think I can put it in the comments. Let me see if this works. I'll put it in the comments later. So let's read this article. Let's do a reaction video, as they say, to this article. So from left, Idaho Republican senators, at least until December 1st, Carl Crabtree, Jim Woodward, and Jeff Hagenbrod all lost their Republican primary races in May 2022. All three opposed House Bill 545, which would have established a loan fund to help build charter school buildings. So this is an opinion piece by this guy who used to be the president at BSU, and I believe he's on their radio show or something like that. I don't know who he is, and I don't really care. But he used to be at BSU. So right off the gate, he kind of sets this article up saying essentially the reason these three guys lost, and by the way, it was way more than just these three guys lost. Lots of guys lost. But he seems to set it up like because they opposed this bill, they lost. To be honest, I never even heard of this bill. So let's go through this. As I look back on my years as president of Boise State University, that's how I knew who he was, because he says it. I remember well the most daunting assignment of the year. That was the presentation Idaho's universities and colleges gave to JFAC committee, who were charged with reviewing the state's budget and recommending it for approval. Okay. Moving right along. My job was to present the Boise State request for funding and to be prepared for questions that could come from any direction. One thing I knew for sure, I hate it when people do this, by the way. I know you all can read, but I'm just reading it and telling you my thoughts in real time. JFAC members were well prepared for quizzing presidents on just how they were using the funding JFAC approved from last year. A lot of them were well prepared. Guys like Ron Nate come to mind, but most of them just rubber stamped everything. Moving right along, and they expected a clear and detailed report on how we would spend the appropriations we requested. Yeah, that's fair. JFAC wants to know how Boise State's going to spend the money. They were prepared by a very competent staff, and I learned early in the experience that JFAC members knew their stuff and acted as the fiscal watchdogs their committee assignments required. Anyway. That's funny for those of us who actually pay attention to this, because if by fiscal watchdogs you mean passing every single budget that comes their way and increasing spending like never before, and just rubber stamping everything Brad Little's office gives to them, then yes, that you could call them fiscal watchdogs. Leadership who appointed members, and by leadership he means Scott Bedke and Chuck Winder under the direction of Brad Little, to JFAC seemed to take great care in appointing legislators who were up to the task of holding agencies responsible for their spending. That's... Sorry, you can't see my face, but I'm laughing. That's hilarious. Holding agencies responsible by what? Voting yes on every single thing they want? By not asking them any tough questions? Anyway, moving right along. I thought about my experience with JFAC the other day when I read the report about Republican Senators Jeff Agenbrod, Carl Crabtree, and Jim Woodward, all of whom served on JFAC and who were defeated in the Republican primary last May by opponents who received significant financial support from arch-conservative Idaho businessman Larry Williams and the IFF. So he's thinking about, so these guys lost. They were defeated in the primary. Yes. He said, we all received significant financial report from arch-conservative Idaho businessman, like he's a villain from a Batman movie or something, Larry Williams. If by significant support you mean $1,000, he gave me $1,000 for the primary. Larry Williams gave me $1,000. The Idaho Freedom Foundation gave me no money. They can't. I mean, they anyway, this is just like a little jab, right? Like, yeah, this guy gave people money, therefore, like, my opponent, by the way, Jeff Agenbrod, raised way more money than me. Let's just put that out there. He raised way more money than me. And I believe Carl Crabtree and Jim Woodward, I could be wrong, raised more than their opponents too, which would be Scott Herndon and Cindy Carlson. So if what he's saying is whoever raises the most money wins, that's not true, because I know my opponent significantly outraised me, but he still lost. So that says something. So the money thing, you know, Larry Williams gave me $1,000 for the primary. One of his businesses gave me $1,000 for the primary. So there's $2,000. If you call that significant financial support, come on, get out of here. Then it says the 3 Republican legislators dared to cross swords with the forces of right-wing mania sweeping Idaho. I love it because it's about time right-wing mania swept Idaho. We've had too much non-right-wing mania sweeping Idaho for too long. We've had big government establishment, big spending, rubber stamp, whatever you want, Mr. Governor, sir, mania sweeping Idaho for far too long. So it's about time some right-wing mania swept Idaho. So these 3 legislators dared to cross swords. And basically what he's saying is here, they voted to hold House Bill 545 in committee rather than send it to the Education Committee for... So he's saying that the reason that these guys got voted out is because they voted to hold one bill in committee rather than send it to the Education Committee for consideration. I never heard of this bill. I never mentioned this bill. So that's... Yeah, Sam, exactly. They don't like that the old guard has passed away. So there's 5 stages of grief. Anger, it's denial and anger, and the media, the far left, and these rhino guys are still in anger. They're like so mad that guys like me won because I'm just a regular guy. But anyway, so he goes on to say, hey, this bill would have given charter schools $2.5 million. Did you see how much they just... So he... In a nut... Okay, so they're concerned, blah, blah, blah. So these 3 guys said they were concerned about giving $2.5 million to fund charter school facilities, but how much do they give health and welfare? They just voted to give public schools $410 million in the special session, or 350 plus, it came out to like almost $500 million. So this is cute, right? They're saying we don't want to give $2.5 million to fund charter schools. How much do they give to Idaho Public Television? How much do they give to all kinds of garbage in JFAC? $2.5 million is nothing compared to the things these three guys have voted for over and over and over to fund indoctrination of our college kids, to fund critical race theory, to fund all kinds of trash. So $2.5 million is just literally a drop in the bucket. So in a nutshell, so he goes on, you can read. And again, I'll post the link to this PDF because I don't want anyone giving these guys $1. Look at this. To $1 to read this article. I'll just give you the PDF for free. These legislators were exercising their statutory responsibilities as JFAC members, safeguarding the state treasury as if they're these guardian angels. These guys never have met a budget bill they didn't like. Safeguarding the state treasury, we've increased our funding by just a stupid amount of money over the last few years. Billions and billions of dollars. They haven't safeguarded anything. That's why they got voted out. Their refusal to safeguard the state treasury. So that's why this article is cute. By refusing to sign off on the revolving fund until they were confident of the accountability measures. Do they keep education accountable? Do they keep health and welfare accountable for funding drag queen story time, where cross-dressing mentally ill men wear lingerie and dance in front of kids? Do they keep them accountable? I don't think they did. In case you missed it, charter schools have emerged as the darling of the right wing. That's not really, he's overstating his case there. The people on the right aren't totally falling in love with charter schools, because charter schools, in my opinion, are just another form of public school. And I'm guessing the right wing loves nothing more than finding general revenue for their projects, which can reduce funding for traditional public schools. That's like half true. I don't think we should. I think we're overfunding traditional public schools right now, so that's not entirely inaccurate. As Ian, you just said facts. Yeah, why would we want to fund traditional public schools when they're indoctrinating our youth? They're indoctrinating an entire generation of kids. Almost done here, guys. And again, you can read this later. I'm just reading this for the second time and just kind of telling you my thoughts as I kind of skim through it. The Idaho Freedom Foundation and right-wing outfits of the same ilk cry crocodile tears over government spending, as they should, as anyone who has half a brain tied behind their back should, especially for schools. Yeah, this is true. Crocodile tears is kind of a little slam, but it's an opinion piece, I guess. But in this case, they targeted conservative Republican legislators for their caution in protecting the state's financial resources. I don't know who the hell they're talking about. The only person on JFAC who tried to protect, at least in the last 2 years, the state's financial resources was Ron Nate and Priscilla Giddings. Everyone else just voted yes on everything, almost all the time. The hypocrisy of their agenda is mind-boggling. That's fine. He can't understand why we want to keep, whatever. He just doesn't understand. Whatever. I'm not even going to comment on that. Mind-boggling. Sure. Williams calls the three Republican legislators. So Larry Williams is the guy they were saying significantly funded me by giving me $2,000 in the primary. Excuse me. Called the three Republican legislators a cabal of career politicians to be disbanded. I agree with that, and they were disbanded. By the way, I beat Jeff Hagenbrod by 15%. So this isn't some fringe whack thing where I beat him by like 3 votes. The Idaho voters showed up in the primary, and 25, and I know there were some retirements and things, but 25% of incumbents lost in the primary. It wasn't just these 3 Republican legislators. It wasn't just these 3 guys who got their asses handed to them. 25% of incumbents lost in the primary. So Idaho is awake. We're not woke, we're awake. That's what happened here. So then he defined, I hate it when people do this. He called them a cabal. Well, Merriam-Webster says, as if like dictionary.com is an irrelevant source because they changed their whatever. That's stupid. Um, a contrived scheme of a group of persons secretly united in a plot. No doubt about it, there is such a thing in Idaho, and the Idaho Freedom Foundation best fits that description. A cabal of a group of persons secretly united in a plot. I would say yeah, except the Idaho Freedom Foundation, I don't get paid by them. They never give me any money. I do appreciate what they do, however. Um, they're not secretly united in a plot. They're out in the open with it. So, their agenda is very clear. They're very public with it, just like Reclaim Idaho and 97%, Idaho 97, both socialist extremist groups who endorsed my opponent, by the way, my previous opponent, because he lost. Best fits that description. It's also a considerable stretch to call these three senators, quote, career politicians when they are in session for only 3 months a year. Whatever, dude. That's cute. Um, you're in session for 3 months a year, but if you've been a senator for 6 straight years, you could debate that, whatever. You're still, when you're not in session, you're still meeting and writing bills and meeting with lobbyists, and you're still doing work, just not as much work when you're not in session. It is beyond ironic that they are not deemed conservative enough. Not really. When you vote like a liberal, you're not deemed conservative. And in my, just the way I was raised, when you vote like a liberal Democrat, like these guys did, it shouldn't be ironic. Um, where was I? I'm sorry. Targeting legislators? No. Okay, here we go. Because they applied basic conservative budget principles if to the appropriations process. Again, no, they didn't. No, they didn't. They increased our budget. They voted yes on everything. They rubber stamped everything Brad Little gave them. They rarely met a spending bill they did not like. How odd to find the right-wing Idaho Freedom Foundation objecting to legislators who were doing the job they were elected to do. Is that odd, though? When people like the Idaho Freedom Foundation call them out on stuff? I don't think that's odd. If the term conservative means anything, it means holding those who use public dollars accountable. It means a hell of a lot more than that. Um, and if, I mean, this sentence is funny. So basically, people like the Idaho Freedom Foundation, or people like myself, or people who called these guys on the carpet for what they did, we did hold those who use public dollars accountable in the primary, because they didn't, using public dollars, because these guys on JFAC, because these three guys completely mismanaged our public dollars in the budget process. We held them accountable by voting them out, right? So, I mean, this sentence, depending on what you mean by it, there's some equivocation here with the language, but yeah, this sentence is right on, just not the way he used it. The sooner prominent leaders across the state call out the Idaho Freedom Foundation for the charlatans they are, the sooner Idaho state government will serve the people of Idaho as it once did before dark money and right-wing agendas overwhelmed Idaho's legislative process. Prominently, they've been doing this, right? Prominent leaders have been calling out the Idaho Freedom Foundation for a long time. The whole dark money, all this, whatever. It's just rhetoric. Charter schools can be an effective, and then he goes back to charter schools can be an effective alternative. Again, these guys didn't lose because of how they voted on one charter school bill. They lost because they vote because they're not liberals, they're statists. I've said this during my campaign. I know that was way back in May, but they served the state instead of the people. That's why they lost. Instead of serving the citizens, they served the state. Brad Little, big government. They grew government and expanded government instead of keeping it small. That's why they lost. Not because of how they voted on on one charter school bill. Blah blah blah. So he makes it about the charter school. It's not. That's not why these guys lost. Targeting legislators. The targeting of legislators who do not buy into every special interest of the radical right comes in this case with some serious negative consequences for state government. Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say I'm radical right. I would say I'm normal right. But yeah, this is true. This is very true. The negative consequences for the state government are they're going to have some guys um, in the Senate and the House who actually stand up for conservative principles this time instead of just rubber stamping everything that gets put in front of them. There is the loss of institutional knowledge. This is one of their talking points. These three experienced members of JFAC. So it's funny how he says these aren't career politicians. They're just regular guys who show up to session for 3 months out of the year. And then he says they have great institutional knowledge because they're experienced and all that kind of stuff. Kind of contradicts himself. Bring their expertise of the technical aspects of the appropriations process to bear on the financial oversight of state agencies who spend appropriated dollars. That's a whole lot of words to not say anything. JFAC members learn from on-the-job training. I'm just going to keep that there. Gained by the experience of sitting in judgment of agency and education budgets. So if these guys, again, he's talking about these three guys. If these three guys learned how to it's just kind of funny. If they learned how to manage appropriations and budgets, is he saying they learned how to do it by getting onto JFAC? This is kind of because if that's the case, I hope to be on JFAC, by the way. Then I will learn from on-the-job training also. But I don't know if that's what he's saying. Is that what he's saying? This sentence is kind of vague. But if he's saying, yeah, you learn this job by doing it, well, then all of the new JFAC members will as well. So it's kind of like a moot point. Those with a few years of JFAC service are role models for the newer JFAC members. Yeah, okay. To lose, don't let Idaho become California. That's the goal. Hi, Nancy, by the way. To lose 3 of the most knowledgeable members of JFAC seriously sets back the effectiveness of JFAC's accountability function. That's hilarious. It seriously sets back something, but it's not the accountability function. Who have they held accountable? I watched a lot of JFAC sessions this year and last year. They just vote yes on everything. And then you have it was always 17-2, 17-2. And it was Ron Nate and Priscilla Giddings were sometimes some of the only people who voted no on anything. Their lack of accountability is why these guys got voted out. They'll just do whatever Brad Little tells them, whatever Chuck Winder told them, whatever Scott Bedke told them. A citizen legislator is grounded in the experiences legislators bring to the process from their own lives and careers. Of course, in this case, Senators Agenbrod, Crabtree, and Woodward brought significant experience from the private sector, especially in financial matters. They are as far as you can get from career politicians. Here's the funny part. 2 things. In this sentence right here, this guy who wrote the article, he's speaking as if myself, Cindy Carlson, and Scott Herndon bring nothing from the private sector. Like as if we're just like homeless people who got voted in. As if we bring nothing to the table, which is completely not true. I'm an entrepreneur. I run my own business. And you know what my business focuses on? Ready for this? And I know I'm not going to speak to Scott and Cindy, but we all bring significant experience from the private sector. I work in financial publishing. So he's basically saying, hey, we're losing these guys because they're bringing a lot to the table, especially financial matters. Well, I work in financial publishing, and I've done that for years. So I'm an entrepreneur. I run my own business. And I work with some of the best financial minds in the United States. So I'm bringing a lot to the table, too. He acts as if we bring nothing to the table. That's just kind of, stages of grief. He's in anger. Anyway, they are as far from you. They are as far as you can get from career politicians. No, no one's really claiming that in the primary. No one really was career politicians. That wasn't really the drum we were beating. We were beating a different drum. But anyway, I digress. As citizen legislators, they bring a valuable calculus to their work of evaluating the requests of state agencies and constructing a state budget that uses tax dollars most efficiently and effectively. Disagree. They didn't do that. They didn't do this part. Use tax dollars most efficiently and effectively. We still have a grocery tax. We still haven't got significant income tax or property tax relief. The way they voted in the special session, I know this was after the primary, but the way they just voted in the special session sure as hell didn't use our tax dollars efficiently and effectively. It's most unfortunate that JFAC loses their expertise across a host of issues facing JFAC driven by a vindictive plot to remove them from the state government over a single issue. This part's true. They lost their expertise across a host of issues facing JFAC. Vindictive, no. I wouldn't say it was a vindictive plot. We were pretty upfront with it, and it wasn't, to remove them from state government over a single issue. This is just, this is hilarious. Ian said, the more I listen to Senator Lenny, the more intelligent he sounds. Hey, I appreciate that. Because, why, Ian? Because I bring significant experience from the private sector. It's just funny. Anyway, we didn't have a vindictive plot to remove them because this is stupid. This is just, I'm just going to say stupid. I just threw all my credibility out the window by calling something stupid. But it is stupid. There was no vindictive plot to remove these guys because they voted a certain way on a charter school bill. That's just asinine. There is a very public and very open, whatever the opposite of vindictive is, plot to remove them from state government because they failed Idaho again and again and again, not on a single issue, on several issues. We are witnessing radical interventions by the far right into Idaho's political process. If you mean people running against them, look at this. This guy right here on the right, nice guy. Jeff Agenbrod, the guy I beat. He is a nice man. I have nothing against him personally. He's a nicer guy than I am. I have no personal issues with him. He seems like a nice guy to me. I ran against him because of his voting record. Full stop. I ran against him because of his voting record. Yeah, Tom Lilly said if they won't listen, we have to make them feel. Yeah, like I think it was Ronald Reagan said, if you can't make them see the light, make them feel the heat. Well, they sure as heck felt the heat in the primary. So he says we're witnessing radical interventions by the far right in Idaho's political process. So I ran against Jeff Agenbrod solely, precisely, only because of his voting record. And what I think is radical is he had been a senator for 6 years. He still is a senator. But the radical thing to me is no one had ever run against him as a Republican before. That's radical. He'd never had an opponent in the Republican primary ever until I signed the little piece of paper. That to me is radical. The far right threatens legislators to support their agendas and then challenges them in the Republican primary. This is true. Far right, he means it as a slur or a slander or whatever, but I'm farther right than these guys. In a fit of pique for daring to think for themselves and demand accountability of those who use public dollars. This is a weird word to use. Pique? Did I say that right? That's a very odd word choice there. As a guy who works in financial publishing, I would never use that word. But he says we threw a fit because they demanded accountability of those who use public dollars. No, this, again, I know this is a long video. I'm just, whatever. They got voted out because they did not demand accountability of those who use public dollars. They fully funded the woke agenda in the colleges. They gave health and welfare what they wanted. They gave Idaho public television. Like we can go, I don't want to go down the list because I don't want to go back into campaign mode. I already did that. But they didn't do this. That's why they lost. As far as Senators Agenbrod, Crabtree, and Woodward, I hope to see them run again. I think the result would be the same. But if they want to run again, you know, Agenbrod's already taking donations for the 2024 primary, which is interesting. I mean, if they run again, I think the result's going to be the same. Republican primary voters would be wise to be wary of campaign endorsements and ads in order to prevent the narrow and rigid thinking of the far right from destabilizing the political process. We destabilized something. It wasn't the political process. Bob, hey Bob, it wasn't the political process we destabilized. We destabilized the stranglehold these statist politicians had on Idaho. That's what we destabilized. I didn't destabilize the process. I filed with the Secretary of State. I signed all the papers. I set up a campaign finance report. What we destabilized is these liberal Republican politicians' stranglehold on the state house. That's what we destabilized. And because the 5 stages of grief, denial, and anger, you're still in anger, you're lashing out in this puff piece that the Idaho Misstatesman ran for you. Absent the kind of accountability they bring to the legislator, the losers will be Idaho's taxpayers, whose tax dollars will serve only the interests of the few. Well, I almost said a swear. I got to keep this G-rated. Bob, Idaho's taxpayers are already losers. These guys, Agenbrod, Crabtree, and Woodward, did nothing to provide any kind of significant tax relief for Idaho taxpayers. We're still paying a grocery tax. Brad Little ran in 2018 saying he'd get rid of it. He didn't. He lied. He shut that process down. Leadership shut that process down. Especially with inflation, with the money supply. I'm in financial publishing, so I don't want to go too far down that rabbit hole. But with the money we're printing, we've printed so much money in the last 2 years, which drives up inflation, and then you pair that with President Brandon's far left policies. Idaho taxpayers are getting completely screwed by these guys, have gotten completely screwed by these guys for years. We're already losing. Property tax, income tax, grocery tax. There were legislators who tried to get rid of the gas tax, for crying out loud. They got shut down. So anyway, that's all. I know this is a long live, but it's Sunday and I'm not in church. So what else do I have to do? I have other stuff to do, but I'll post a link to this PDF in the comments. For those of you who actually listen to me ramble for this long, I appreciate it. And yeah, just wanted to go through this article because it's definitely filled with a lot of anger and misstatements and half-truths, here by old Bob. So I'll post a link in the comments and I will talk to you guys later. Okay, bye.